In the Gateway of Liberation, Volume 1, we introduced the preliminary principles of life, which are the foundation of the ageless wisdom. Before we begin Volume 2, it will be of value to reiterate an essential point made in Volume 1, that our experience here on Earth is not only upon the physical plane, in our physical bodies. It is also upon the inner planes, in our subtle or spiritual bodies. These planes of existence interpenetrate one another and are separated by magnetic bands which act as barriers between worlds. During the hours of sleep, while in our subtle bodies, our consciousness is more free to explore these inner worlds, and sometimes will gather insights and intuitions which may trickle down to the waking consciousness as helpful ideas, spiritual symbols, or positive affirmations. Another essential point to reiterate: students on the spiritual path have the possibility to contact those energies and forces that can speed up their evolution if they undergo the tests required to learn certain lessons. These tests come from situations, circumstances, guides, or teachers, and for accepted disciples, sometimes a master of the wisdom. The masters of wisdom are the souls who have already passed through the elusive gateway of liberation, and therefore act as wayshowers of the light for all souls still treading the path of ascent. Yet before we can access this higher type of guidance, we must have at least partially awakened to our own divinity. The masters working in concert form our spiritual hierarchy and function as the custodians of the great plan, orchestrated by the planetary life, which we are all merely cells within its body. In order to become servants of this greater life, we must acquire knowledge for the acquisition of wisdom, because knowledge without wisdom only serves a limited reality. Wisdom serves the purpose of unfolding our deeper, more inclusive love nature. The soul will bring us into alignment with the purpose and plan for humanity, as it is known by the Spirit. From incarnation to incarnation, we edge closer and closer to that glorious consummation of human achievement, marked out by the spiritual adepts of the world. This is the final goal for all spiritual initiates: freedom from rebirth through the gleaming and narrow path of self-realization. We have seen that the preliminary training of the pupil is carried out upon the inner planes, where they are taught the purpose of life, the vision of the goal, and the methods to reach the goal. From the teaching which filters through from the inner planes to our waking consciousness, the pupil learns to orient themselves in life so that the goal of liberation dominates our actions. Within you is awakened, likewise, the spirit of compassion, which must guide you safely through the perilous way of ascent. The first class is to awaken your consciousness to recognition of the laws of evolution and of the purpose of life. The second group began your training and taught you control of the vehicles. The third is open only to those who have proven themselves worthy and dedicated, who have passed the preliminary tests and pledged themselves to follow the light at any cost. In the third group of classes, experimental work is done in dealing with conditions on the inner planes. Usually, several years elapse in preparatory classes before entering the third group. Groups of pupils are also divided according to their need for training. Maps are made of their characters, plotting their qualities and weaknesses, so they know themselves, and the development of certain qualities are marked for immediate attention. Then karma is adjusted as to give them conditions in which these qualities can be developed most easily, for instance, courage and persistence, or patience and self-control. Difficulties and problems arise in the outer life which will demand the development of the required quality. If the pupil meets these successfully, he or she will rapidly achieve the progress desired. They should therefore look upon these difficult conditions as special opportunities vouchsafed to them whereby they can make more rapid progress. It is often hard, when one is seeking to live a more spiritual life, to find daily problems suddenly intensified. But this intensification marks the attention of the soul, turned to pressing its personality or instrument forward. Difficulties are then opportunities, not penalties. If the pupil can surmount these difficulties, they will rapidly clear away the obstacles in the path of their progress. Upon the inner planes are found the chapels of silence, where echoes of the cosmic song can be heard. It is here where interplanetary exchanges take place, where the Great White Lodge of our planet reports to the Greater Lodge within the solar system. Used for various purposes, these chapels have around them a magnetic sheath which isolates them from contact with coarser vibrations from the three lower worlds. For example, Devachan is a heavenly world which exists upon the higher mental plane, and acts as a place of refuge where souls can find refreshment and rest from their arduous labors before reincarnating back into the lower worlds. The chapels of silence are also used on special occasions during specific times as receiving stations for cosmic energies or vibrations from other planets, and for meditation and reflection. The stillness and isolation from outer thought forms permit the bodies to be tranquilized, and the chela can gradually cleanse the vehicles of self-initiated activities. When this occurs, you can, in a curious way, see into your own vehicles and study their texture, structure, and characteristics or qualities, and learn much about yourself and glimpse what qualities are still lacking. You begin to know yourself and see the plan of your evolution from the vantage point of the causal body. Structure means the basic type of response to vibration in the vehicles. Texture indicates the fineness or coarseness of the matter drawn into them. Quality or character means the varying powers of mind and emotion built in by their virtues and vices. In the chapels of silence, one learns to see themselves as they truly are. Everyone has a fundamental response to life, which is your keynote, the keystone of your arc, determined by your ray and subray. First, you discover whether you are interested in the form and building the form, or in the thought which lies behind the form. There is a very fundamental difference between the two, which continues up to the Godhead. In all nature, in all evolution, there are two great forces at work, one shaping the form and the other unfolding the spirit. And these two, working together, are the secret of all manifestation and of all progression. In the final analysis, everyone must be allied to one side or the other. All artists, architects, gardeners, sculptors, and surgeons respond to the building of form, whereas teachers, political leaders, writers, philosophers, scientists, and soldiers respond to the spur of spirit or the impulse of mind. One may interpret all things in terms of color, another sound, or another of form. One may be geometric in their thought forms, another create more indefinite flashes of light. Another may link with human feelings and characteristics and therefore interpret vibrations in terms of mankind. whereas another may interpret in terms of nature, akin to the spirit expressed in mountains, fields, and trees. As mentioned earlier, all is determined by the greater ray and plane upon which you function, and even more specifically, to the particular subray and subplane which you are attuned. In these chapels of silence, the disciple slowly begins to see themselves as if reflected in a mirror. You learn the keynote of each vehicle. First of the lower three, belonging to the personality, body, emotions, and mind, and later to the causal body. Frequently, each vehicle manifests a different one of the three gunas, or attributes: activity, rhythm, and stability. Some have activity of the body, some activity of emotions, others activity of the mind. Some have activity of all three. In other cases, the dominant quality of the dominant vehicle overshadows or reflects itself in the other two. Intense mental activity of the lower mind usually manifests as restlessness in the physical body. Activity in the emotional body also shows itself in action, but rather in impulsive actions and in the need for excitement, rather than restless physical activity. Rhythmic vibration that is harmonious in the lower vehicles creates a pleasant effect for all who are near that person, but it often means lack of power in the mind. In any case, the disciple is told not to change the type of activity, but rather to develop it into its highest qualities and apply proper control over it. Slowness of mind serves concentration and continued effort. The mind does not tire easily and makes the persistent student. Swiftness of mind brings alertness and action in emergencies. Rhythm brings harmony, but sometimes indecision because of the ability to see both sides can make it difficult to decide. Stability in the vehicles as a fixed expression often reflects itself as stubbornness and the inability to learn quickly, but it means endurance, steadfastness, and usually loyalty. In each case, a balancing point must be sought, where the best qualities of the type of vehicle are used and counterbalanced. It must be clearly understood that the three gunas, action, stability, and rhythm are manifestations of three types of force which exist in the universe. Neither can be said to be better than the other. They are merely different, with distinctive uses and qualities. Rajas, or action, can be likened in the physical world to electricity, inertia or stability to the immobile strength of mountains, and rhythm with the ceaseless movement of the sea. Rhythm is often interpreted as harmony. In actuality, it is only the intermediate balancing force of the other two. You must learn the dominant force within yourself. The main source of motive is kama manas, or mind colored by desire, ambition and love being the two common forces, masculine and feminine. They manifest themselves into the three vehicles. Ambition in the physical manifests as ambition for physical power, in the emotional as ambition for domination over others, and in the mind as ambition for conquest in the mental world. Love manifests first in the physical body as sensual indulgence, second in the emotional as an intense sex nature, a constant demand for attention, and the third in the mental as desire to feel one's sex power over men or women regardless of the pain inflicted. These are, of course, the vices, the lower types of these forces, or the distortion of these energies by the ego. These two great forces, love and ambition, are replicas of buddhi and manas, or intuition and mind, negative and positive, and are modified by the types of matter in which they work upon each of the 7 planes. As the student learns to know themselves, as you learn your tools, as you learn what qualities are needed to protect yourself from the shadow of your own powers, and these you seek to unfold. Being violent or destructive needs poise and tenderness. Inertia or stability needs energy aroused by the motive of devotion. Rhythm needs steadfastness and perseverance. Each ray and sub-ray have its compensating ray or quality which must be developed to establish balance. It is the purpose of the teacher to instruct each student to know themselves, to know their type, their way or line of development, and their strengths and weaknesses. The purpose is not to change the type of force, but to develop it to its highest point of efficiency. In order to do this, the powers peculiar to your ray must be unfolded at the same time the necessary safeguards to the dangers of that ray built in, so that through your training you become efficient, balanced, and dependable. When the disciple has entered the preliminary classes and passed through the preliminary training outlined, they are taken night after night to special magnetized areas in the inner worlds, where certain forces can be played upon them, which result in definite stimulation of certain aspects of their vehicles. After the disciple has learned somewhat of their nature and has made the first steps in knowledge of the self during the preliminary classes and in the chapels of silence, they are placed under the supervision of one of the senior disciples, who carries out a program laid down by one of the masters. And in this way, visit museums where replicas of ancient ceremonies are on display in order to stimulate within them memories of forces and truths gained in earlier lives. Flashes of the past then come into the waking consciousness as feelings or thoughts, or even as pictures. These early experiences, however, should not be given too much weight. They are but broken memories which are vivified in order to assure the waking consciousness of the reality of the inner worlds. True vision comes later, vision of work now on hand, or to be attained in the future. Fragments of the past must not establish old habits of thought or feeling which would not be suitable to the present point of development. In each age, the methods change because the energies change. What worked then will not necessarily work now or later. The next step is establishment of certain qualities in the character, which balance vices and virtues. Once the chela has accomplished the required work at hand and taken the necessary steps along the path, they are brought into one of the classes of the masters. Few students make it this far, but those who do make rapid progress thereafter. From here, he or she may obtain some degree of insight into the Great White Lodge or spiritual hierarchy of our planet. This will undoubtedly give a glimpse of what lies ahead, but not necessarily the next immediate step forward. The Masters of Wisdom, that group of liberated souls who work as the custodians of the plan, endeavor to lead all souls toward the gateway of liberation. During the training and testing of the chela on the probationary path, their progress is watched and recorded by a senior disciple, or sometimes even a master of the wisdom. The sum of efforts, of failures, and of successes are recorded, and according to the balance of these, force is either increased or decreased. When you first place your foot upon that narrow path which leads to initiation of your own free will. You challenge fate and demand from the gods the priceless gift of discipline. This discipline must not only make you a kind person, but also a wise person, a powerful person, but above all, a person who has been tested in every way for human weakness and has thus conquered, not by suppression, but by transmutation. With all said and done, the point of view that the occult student takes upon the probationary path must differ from that of the average person in the world. It is not others' attitudes toward you, but rather your attitude toward the world which determines your progress. You must prove that you are free from the dangers of hatred. You may feel hurt, you may feel upset, you may feel injustice, but you must accept these without hatred. As difficult as it may seem, your enemies are your best teachers, since they offer the tests which alone can assure your spiritual unfoldment. This does not mean that when someone becomes an initiate, they will be free from all human weakness. But it does mean you have shown powers of stability, perseverance, and compassion, and a desire for service to the world. It's not that you must attain full control over your lower nature, but a measure of control. You must meet disappointment and betrayal, actual or seeming, with a sense of self-control. Therefore, it matters not if we seem unjustly treated. It matters only whether we be just to others. It is often difficult to remember this when suffering the indignities of persecution. Look upon these hardships as opportunities and not penalties. In the end, the Akashic records show the truth, and you will be judged accurately to the last tiny act. When a pupil has definitely sought the probationary path and turned their face to the goal of divinity, when they have proved their eagerness and dedication, they are allowed to draw upon the Master's forces for inspiration, strength, and encouragement. But when the hour of test comes, the Master withdraws their aid so that the inner strength of the chela can be proven. Each time you break through the mist of illusion thrown upon you, the light within surges and increases its steady glow. Another facet of the divine jewel has been polished, to remain ever as a testimony of your divine heritage. From this point, you begin to draw yourself closer to the Master's aura and share in the work of the inner ashram. The use of this force expands and develops your vehicles and their powers. Your brain increases in power, your devotion in purity, your actions in accuracy, and your vitality in voltage. At the same time, you begin definite training upon the inner planes, where you are taught the use and control of specific forces there. Little by little, you gain knowledge of the control of various elements, of elementals connected with them, and of devas in charge of the elementals. You are taught the line of evolution of these elementals, the motive power of their action, and the type of force which they obey. This differs greatly for different groups of devas and their corresponding elementals. To accomplish this control, 3 things are needed: serenity, dedication, and courage. Many people fail in handling elementals because they lose control of themselves and are therefore attacked by the forces they use. In the same way as an electrical engineer might endanger himself if, in a fit of irritation, he jammed the machinery controlling the currents of high voltage. Therefore, as you progress further and further each step along the way, you are only given access to power slightly above your threshold. This allows you to advance steadily, but with the least amount of risk. Once you have passed all these tests and proved yourself fit for advancement, and by carrying out the Master's force successfully, and by resisting attacks, you pass to the point of becoming an accepted disciple. In all these things, you are taught how to command the service of devas and elementals in the name and by the authority of the White Lodge, as an agent of its power. This means you will have access to reservoirs of the Master's powers at any time while conducting your service work. You will then begin to find the specific force that you need for service. While on probation, you found at times a downpour of force to meet some special need, but now you can summon it at will. Beyond this point lies the portal of initiation, and beyond that, the holy heights of divine consciousness. After many lifetimes of treading the probationary path and eventually becoming an accepted disciple, the time approaches for the master to present the chela for initiation. The chela must prove to the satisfaction of the spiritual hierarchy that they are fit for power to be bestowed upon them. They must have passed certain definite tests along the path of discipleship in order to prove the progress they have made. You must prove not only your desire for service, but your capacity to succeed, and through all the hours of waking consciousness in every action of the day, you must see the opportunity to discipline your vehicles and improve your powers of mind. The qualifications are divided into 4 major groups: point of view, renunciation, power, sacrifice. These have been variously stated and are sometimes called discrimination, desirelessness, right conduct, and love. Let us analyze them another way, as to throw added light upon the practical problem of attainment. Point of view, or orientation. It has been said that the greatest gift a master can give their pupil is a change in their point of view. As one passes through the 7 ages of man, from childhood to maturity, the most noticeable change is that of your point of view. The highlights of childish joy fade as the desires of adolescence arise. The desires of adolescence make way for the ambition and mental achievement of maturity. Increasing discrimination between relative values, between the important and the unimportant, constitutes maturity of the soul. In the latter cycles of incarnation, the powers of mind become more essential than the powers of the body. Brute force is valuable for the primitive man, but not necessarily for the civilized man. Yet, just as the brute force, which has taught the primitive man to defend his own tribe, lays the foundation for that loyalty and sacrifice for the family, which marks the best type of civilized man, so too the virtues of the civilized man lead directly to the more impersonal virtues of the spiritual occultist. In no way are standards of the spiritual occultist relaxed. On the contrary, they are more stringent. Just as the civilized man has developed a strong sense of personal love for his family, the spiritual occultist must develop impersonal love for all humanity. Eventually, this must be held as the greatest value. Indeed, this must be so, for as you progress in power and begin to direct and distribute the occult forces of the planet, you must be above the temptation of seeking to use them for your own aggrandizement. Just as the distributor of public funds must be above the temptation of diverting any of those funds for the use of their own family. The secret brotherhood is indeed a pledged army, pledged to guard and protect the planet as far as lies in its power from evil and destructive forces. With all said and done, the fundamental change of one's orientation or point of view is that they no longer seek to just live as a human being, but as a soul, first and foremost. The next great qualification is usually expressed as renunciation or desirelessness. It is the gradual tearing loose of those tentacles which hold us to the personal life, of the multitude of small desires which govern and make up the majority of our personality. One must lose the fear of life and the fear of death. And yet, every soldier, perforce, practices these virtues, especially during the mass emotion of a great emergency. The human tree has its roots in the ground, and it clings to the earth and feels that all the majesty of its leafy head comes from its strong grip upon the soil, and this is true. The power and success of the personal life depends a good deal upon its grip on the physical plane and the multitude of little desires that run out like tentacles and hook onto various aspects of physical being. If you tear these ruthlessly asunder, the very life force of the incarnation dies. It dies into indifference, into lethargy, and into death. Such destruction must be avoided. Those tentacles which lead to strength and power must not be torn loose until they can be re-established above in the impersonal worlds to feed the impersonal life. Instead of drawing sustenance from the earth, they must draw sustenance from the spiritual worlds above. As the orchid draws its sustenance from the air and seeks no contact with the rich soil of earth, so too the occultist must draw their life from the inner worlds. Personal desires must be consumed by the flame of devotion. In the truest sense, desirelessness means selflessness. Yet it does not require aestheticism, nor suggest it. Aestheticism is no virtue in itself, except insofar as it is a means to an end to teach self-conquest. Yet the purpose of life is not aestheticism, but self-mastery. One should not renounce the joy in beauty, nor the capacity for love and tenderness, nor the power of affection for those near and dear. True renunciation requires freedom from the grip of the elementals, which for so many lives are the forces to which you act and react. For example, it is not necessary to refrain from food. It is only necessary to control the appetite, so that wisdom guides it instead of desire. This is true of all physical functions. Every function in the physical body has its godlike purpose, but undeveloped humans are a pawn of nature, guided only by the elemental forces which pushed them out of the animal kingdom. Until you are released from the grip of the elementals, you are not free. Renunciation means complete subjugation of personal will to divine will. The third qualification is power. This requires the development of all the forces latent in the vehicles, roused, purified, and directed by the divine flame of spiritual will. Only awakened spiritual fire can carry you onward through the trials and dangers which beset the path. Indeed, without it, all else is valueless. True power depends upon skill in action, directed by a flaming will. You must begin to polish and perfect all the powers of the personality, directing this skillful instrument in service of the divine self. Many people often aspire to the spiritual life by neglecting the personality or disregarding it, and seek to dwell in a fancy realm far removed from the physical world. This is diametrically opposed to the actual plan and purpose of evolution. We are here in the three lower worlds of form to perfect an instrument. The purpose of human incarnation is to develop the powers latent in form, to unfold, control, and direct them. It must be remembered that the purpose of the spiritual occultists differs from the purpose of the average good person in the world. With the occultist, the achievement of virtue is but the preliminary steps to the achievement of spiritual power. Virtue must safeguard the use of power, but virtue without power can accomplish very little. In the inner worlds, no one without virtue can be considered, but no one without power can be accepted. The proper use of spiritual power must be developed from these 6 qualities: enthusiasm, faith, courage, skill in action, selflessness, and obedience. The final great qualification is sometimes called love and sometimes sacrifice. Sacrifice in the sense of making all things sacred. Love in its highest expression is sacrifice, for it sanctifies all things that it touches. It means offering all that we have and are toward the service of the divine plan. No personal love nor personal tie can ever make you falter in your allegiance to the highest vision, that you are free. Not free from love, but free from that elemental urge which sweeps humans on like a rushing wind, so that in the service of their beloved one, they know neither good nor evil. They know only what they call love. It is from this that you must be free. That expression of the personality which we call love has distinctive boundaries and limitations, but the love that is expressed by the soul is completely selfless and inclusive. This is the love we must aspire to, a love that goes beyond our family, beyond our race or culture, a love that includes all humanity and that extends to the furthest reaches of known space. Indeed, this is a lofty type of love, which to the personality may seem impractical or a far-off dream, but nevertheless, it is the innate expression of every human soul. Our readiness for this kind of love determines our progress upon the path. Throughout our long path of ascent, ever before us gleams the goal of the narrow gateway of liberation. Through this, we must pass to gain our heritage. And when we reach at last the snowy peaks of consciousness, which marks the spiritual adept, you will have fulfilled the purpose of human incarnations. From these heights, you will determine whether you shall go onward to other realms of experience, or turn back to help your younger brethren to achieve as you have achieved. Only having passed through the gateway after crossing the burning ground can you truly know yourself and the great law which determines the plan for all humanity. Once you glimpse this law, once you pledge yourself to cooperate with it, you begin to gain knowledge and wisdom to help this darkened star. Before that, all is darkness, and you cannot see how to serve, for the darkness is your own mind. Only as you learn the truth regarding the purpose of life and the method of achievement, not intellectually, but from true inner knowledge, or gnosis, can you truly help mankind. In the final analysis of the inner conflict and struggle within ourselves, the spirit of altruism must win the day. Through the narrow gate of self-sacrifice, where it is stripped of all worldly attachments, must pass the awakened soul on its journey to spiritual fulfillment and liberation. Near the entrance of the gate are attendant devils who whisper of the lost pleasures who forsakes, who turns their face from the world of lost joys, lost comforts, which are indeed only phantoms, but which lure the mind of the unperceiving. All that is impermanent must pass away from your consciousness, so that you hold only to the eternal verities of which these fantasies are but flickering shadows, acting only as beacons to help you search for the real. At the heart of every delight lies the germ of reality, which leads one to seek the perpetuation of this delight. It is but a toy given to a child to teach them to yearn for the reality it represents, as a girl is given a doll to teach her the virtues of motherhood. So life offers us symbols of eternal things, but breaks them in our hands lest we believe them real. Neither love, nor joy, nor happiness, nor work can remain eternally to comfort us in this realm of the unreal if we give our heart to the world of shadows and fail to seek the world of reality where lies our heritage. Love unspeakable, joy unbelievable, peace unbreakable awaits us in the realms of godhood. But we must first give back all the tokens we have gathered here before we may reach upward to that which awaits us there. These three things should be understood. First, the mark of spiritual power is not phenomena. It is radiance, a clear white light which shines about the personality like a halo. It may be sensed by those who have developed the required sensitivity. Second, it is not intellect, but wisdom which marks the spiritual teacher. Wisdom coming from the heart, from the understanding of life and of human consciousness. Third, there must be spiritual insight, not just clairvoyance, which is only an extension of sight, nor clairaudience, which is an extension of hearing, but spiritual penetration, which permits a soul to see the heart of reality, to recognize true living values, and to strip others of the veils of illusion and delusion, which so often grasp the personality. True spiritual power seeks only to light the flame within another heart, the flame of spiritual fire, which burns away the personal self. These are the hallmarks of spiritual potency. a word on compassion. The Christ is no sentimentalist. He is a living flame, a lightning flash of white light. It is this office within the spiritual hierarchy to withstand all evil forces. But destructive forces are here for a purpose, and they must fulfill that purpose. You must win your divinity through self-conquest. It is not simply bestowed upon you. You enter human life to risk failure and damnation to attain the crown of the creative mind. Only as you conquer evil within yourself and in the elemental worlds can you achieve liberation. When the soul has passed through broken and troubled waters, when pain and anguish of mind and body have done their work, then you are ready to turn away from the turmoil at any price and seek peace. Only then are you ready to enter the spiritual life, and only then can you value and appreciate it. Earlier, it would have been unsatisfying, for heaven is not the satisfaction of the senses, but, on the contrary, it is the starvation of the senses, or the satisfaction of the spirit. Many younger souls cannot yet enter the higher worlds consciously, even after death, for they have no capacity for the enjoyment of the things which heaven offers. They are still earthbound, and for these younger souls, there are earthbound paradises established in the astral worlds, likened to playgrounds. Eon after eon, we pass through the trials and tribulations of human life. Evolution through denser matter is undertaken to slowly learn how to unfurl the pinions of the spirit, and this alone is worthy of achievement. Know and obey the law. Pledge yourself to a life of service. Above all else, liberation should be the true goal of your life. Study the laws which are eternal, and through them shall come the faint glimmer of eternal truth. In all generations, in all powers, on all planets, this great law persists. It is that for which the whole universe has come into being. It is also that for which the solar deities seek to realize. To the law are all things known. By the law are all things possible. One must stand before this realization with the most profound reverence and humility. Its power and presence are beyond anything of this world. It transcends all things. Seek it within yourself, and when you find it, bow before its majesty, wheresoever and howsoever it be expressed. For as we learn to fulfill the law, so do we learn to know ourselves, our world, and our place within it. Only then do we achieve true power, for this law is eternal. Obey, servants of the law, obey.